Boardwalk School of Economics, the right choice.
Okay, greetings, fam, once again. This is the Reverend Dr. Claud A. Sinclair. So what we're going to talk, we had part 4 here. What we're going to talk about, we'll probably do a couple more parts here, maybe 1 or 2 more parts here to round this thing out, just so we can raise the consciousness of the black community, black individuals, and hopefully you stand with the program and you sharing it with other people and pass it on and get you a group together and listen to this material so we can work together. And they're opening the door for us to talk about it, but they're just doing this on paper. They know what the problems are, but they do not have the will to fix it. You should have your own will. I'm showing you how it's done. Showing you how it's done. And I am a black son that was sent to school. Like everybody said, well, we want our kids to go to college and do well, but you need to support us. And you always talk about, well, black people don't reach back and help and support. They do. But you need to give them something to support. You know, you don't put good money after bad money. And once we build and do this thing right, all the money is going to flow our way. And the communities and so forth. We make the communities safe and productive where they can come bring their money. They love us. We have to make it where all this propaganda and all that kind of stuff goes by the wayside. We more than gangster rappers and basketball players and entertainers that shuck and jive. We are loving, productive individuals, and we need to act that way. And we need to make sure that the world knows it so we can have those tourist dollars coming to our communities so we can come up. And we can rebuild our communities, have luxurious homes in our communities. We ain't got to move out of our communities so we can have a good life. It's a thought process. And if you want to drive a Mercedes and these top of the line, buy a manufacturing plant or buy a car dealership so that way you can have as many new cars as you want to when they come out. Amen? Amen. All right. Like I said, go to powerthroughunity.org. There's a 3-pronged ministry. First, we want to get our minds right, get our spirits right. Then we want to educate ourselves, and then we want to do business with one another. Right? I call it the 3 kingdoms. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the black-white gap and multi-generational poverty. And like I said, this is Brookings, brookings.edu. You can go to their website, and the name of it is Long Shadows, the Black-White Gap and Multi-Generational Poverty. And they also had this is just an excerpt discussion from a report that they did. I downloaded the full report. You can find that on the link on this in the page of this article here. But like I said, the bottom line, they're just studies. We already know what the problems are. We just got to be able to fix the problems within ourselves and within our communities, within our households. And it takes action. See, they're telling us what the problem is. I'm telling us how we can resolve the problem. You know, my whole thing, my expertise is finance and economics. I can teach you this stuff. See? And they got greater teachers that you can learn different things. And you can take a class in business. You can take a class in that. But this program is far superior than that because I give you a macroeconomic viewpoint so that way you know how everything fits together. I give you the complete picture. So that way, when you go out with your investments, with your classes and stuff like that, you know how it fits in. When you get that first paycheck, you know, from education and studies or your trade and stuff, you know what to do with it. That's why you want to make sure your children are educated. So when they graduate high school at 17, 18 years old, they're ready for life. They're ready to be a functional and participant in life. And even if you don't go to college after that, this gives you that start. This is about finance and economics. This is how the economy works. See? So you be prepared, you be competent individuals to make somebody else's business more profitable, or you can do your own thing. But a job refines you. It gives you the cash flow so you can invest in your future self, right? And this information and the knowledge from a job, the being on time, the discipline, the skills in a corporate environment will help you later on because when you get older and your salary gets to be more demanding, Or if you're one of those people like me that really can't work in a corporate environment because I need to be independent, I can't go through all those loops and stuff, then it's right for you. See? We want to have a community of scholars. So now they're bidding for the talent. So all of a sudden they're driving up the wages and stuff because now they're trying to cherry pick our talent because we have the best talent there is. We need to start be able to have scientists and engineers and labs and so forth. So when they come out with a vaccine or virus or something, we're on the forefront of that because one shot does not fit all. Our biological system is different from their system. So they can't, their biology and our biology are different. See? And we're like, bobbleheads, and we can't even defend ourselves. That doesn't make sense. And then when we create generational wealth, we're not creating wealth for the next generation to sit around and be lazy and just smoking and drinking and not do anything. We want to go to the next level. How nice would it be if your parents and grandparents gave you a house? You don't have to pay rent now. All you got to do is keep it up and maintain it. But now you have resources to go to another level, to create even more generational, not to vegetate and to party all day and live it up. Oh, I'm just living for the moment. That's, come on now. That doesn't make sense. Okay, the black-white gap in multi-generational poverty. Let's take a look at this. Now, I'm making them short and sweet. I'm not making them too long here. You go to the YouTube videos. I have a lot of videos up there for YouTube videos and so forth, and just tilling the soul of the mind so we can plant good seed, right? Okay, issues of black-white inequality and racial injustice have taken center stage over the past year to a degree not seen for a generation. These issues, like I said, we've been through this before, and they go back to sleep to just reports, man. Come on now. We got to make it different. We have to do what we need to do. These issues cover a wide range of topics, touching on policing and criminal justice, labor market discrimination, gaps in educational opportunity, social capital inequities, and racial wealth gap. Understanding the ways in which these inequalities have been reproduced across generations is an important first step in creating a more equitable society where upward social mobility and economic opportunities are accessible to all. And say in our new paper, Long Shadows, the black-white gap in multi-generational poverty, we take a multi-generational perspective on economic inequality by race, showing the persistence of unequal economic opportunity for Black Americans across time. Recent work has highlighted stark disparities in social mobility across two generations for Black and white Americans, but we know relatively little about black-white gaps in the experience of multi-generational mobility and poverty across more than two generations. All right, we know what happened. They just citing studies. But it's deeper than that, right? It's deeper than that. But we have to dust ourselves off, and we should be stronger now, and we should be wiser now, and train our children and make sure that they have historical perspective and knowledge. And that's what this program is designed to do. We estimate the black-white gap in multi-generational poverty across 3 generations using the panel study of income dynamics, called the PSID. Panel Study of Income Dynamics, which began tracking families in 1968. The PSID allows us to link the incomes of adults today in their 30s with the incomes of their parents and dating back to the civil rights era, their grandparents. For each generation, we define poverty as being in the bottom quintile, 50% of the income distribution. Our headline findings is that 3-generation poverty is over 16 times higher among Black adults than white adults, 21.3% and 1.2% respectively. In other words, 1 in 5 Black Americans are experiencing poverty for the 3rd generation in a row, compared to just 1 in 100 white Americans. We know it didn't happen by accident. They took everything from us and want to know why. They blaming us, right? Making sure our kids, even the educational system now, the home is the Department of Housing and Education, Health, Education, and Welfare. That's why I got an educational program in the home. Then that way we can start building our own schools and institutions and making sure that, because my kids, they would go to school and learn this stuff. I'm like, wait a minute. They come home and share it with me. I say, listen, I know you got to study this stuff to pass your test, but let me tell you what the real deal is, right? So it's balance. Your home should have balance. You should have balance. In my home, it was reading, had bookshelves and reading because I was in law school studying and so forth. So they picked those habits up too. See? Black families experience higher rates of poverty, less upward mobility, and more downward mobility. And we got to get away from this job, thing, because you lose your job. I don't care how wealthy you are. If you dealing on a job situation, you lose your job, you poor. And you guys are thinking so highly of yourself because you got a high paying job, and your job fire you. Come on now, you're not thinking. You acting all uppity and think you all this, and just like these sports figures and stuff. All of a sudden they get $1 million contract, more money than a person making a lifetime. And they squander it, going to buying these big homes and so forth like that, lose their contract, and all of a sudden your house is a dust bowl. Pool's nasty, everything's not kept up, the plaster falling off the wall. That's ridiculous. Got to think different. You should be set up for life. You're an athlete, you're going to college, get an education. That's a stepping stone. You're investing in your future self. We have to think differently. Make sure our estate plans are in order. Got wealthy entertainers with no estate plan in place. Black families experience higher rates of poverty, less upward mobility, and more downward mobility. There are 3 mechanisms that could potentially give rise to racial gaps and poverty across multiple generations. First, if the initial poverty rates of earlier generations are sufficiently large that even if black and white Americans escape poverty at similar rates, black poverty would remain more common over time. Second, even if black Americans did not have higher rates in earlier generations, higher poverty rates in earlier generations, racial gaps in poverty might persist or widen if black upward mobility out of poverty is lower than mobility among white Americans. What was that? Second, even if black Americans did not have higher poverty rates in earlier generations, racial gaps in poverty might persist or widen if black upward mobility out of poverty is lower than mobility among white Americans. Third, even if black Americans did not have higher initial poverty rates or less upward mobility, racial gaps might show up if downward mobility rates into poverty are higher for blacks than whites. Yeah, like I said, losing that job, man. You shoot up there, but all of a sudden you run into that racist employer, like I did. You just like, wait, I'm not dealing with this. You resign or get fired, you right back down at the in the poor level, unless you use that income wisely and invest. So that way, invest in income producing assets, and knowing that those jobs come and go. In our analysis, we find that all 3 factors contribute to today's income gap. Black Americans experience higher initial poverty rates, less upward mobility, and more downward mobility, right? That what they call that the glass ceiling. You can only go up so high. We first observed the income earned by the grandparents of today's adults around 1970. While only 9% of today's white adults in their 30s had a grandparent in the bottom fifth of the income distribution, that was true of 59% of today's black adults in their 30s. Put another way, of today's black and white adults in their 30s, 2/3, 65% of those with a poor grandparent are black. Clearly, then, initial poverty rates are higher for black families. If we go back just 1 generation instead of 2, and observe the income of the parents of today's adults, we find a similar picture. Among black adults today, 55% had parents in the bottom fifth of the income